In the winter of 1990, I attended the annual membership meeting of the Kodiak Area Native Association. The meeting was held on St. Patrick's Day. I was on Kodiak Island to discuss an issue with tribal leaders involving a project my colleague, Professor Lynn Goldstein, was about to undertake at Fort Ross, the site of a former Russian outpost in Northern California. Fort Ross was occupied by members of the Russian American Company from 1812 to 1841. During this time, the Russians brought a large number of Alaskan Natives to the California outpost to help in the procurement of sea otter furs. Many of the Alaskans came from Kodiak Island, and we knew that some of them were buried in the historic cemetery at Fort Ross. At the request of the Russian Orthodox Church, Professor Goldstein was about to embark on a 3-year endeavor to locate the unmarked graves and help restore the cemetery. This required my consulting with representatives of the descendants of those buried in the cemetery at Fort Ross, thus my visit to Kodiak Island. Shortly after I arrived in the town of Kodiak, I met with Margaret Roberts, who was then the head of the Kodiak Area Native Association, or KANA. We discussed this new dance group she and a few others in her community had just begun. Her regalia was hanging on her office wall, and it was spectacularly beautiful and deeply sacred at the same time. I asked Margaret how she had come to make her outfit, and she told me that she had copied an outfit she saw depicted in a photo. She pulled a book off her bookcase and opened it to a photo of an identical Alutiiq dance regalia. The book was Crossroads of Continents, Cultures of Siberia and Alaska by William Fitzhugh and Aaron Crowell, a book that had been published 2 years earlier. Afterwards, Margaret told me about why she and a couple of the other adult women had started the dance group. She told me that they had wanted to give members of her community, especially young people, a traditional alternative for maintaining their sense of who they are. At the time, Kodiak Island was experiencing many of the same social ills affecting other indigenous peoples elsewhere in North America. Margaret thought that by turning back to traditional dance, her community might prevent the degradation and loss of their Alutiiq traditions. Upon seeing Margaret's regalia, I remarked how much I'd love to see her dance group perform. I didn't realize at the time that they were going to be dancing at the big membership meeting later that week, the same meeting I had come to attend in order to present my case for the work at Fort Ross. I arrived at the meeting and marveled at the room already filled with hundreds of local Alaskan Natives. The members of KANA were associated with 6 or 7 traditional villages scattered about the island. While I was standing there taking in the scene, someone from the dance group came over and introduced themselves to me. They told me that the dancers wanted me to join them for their first dance, and that if I'd come with them, they'd teach me the dance movements. I almost fainted when I heard that. I'm not a good dancer. I have 2 left feet. But I couldn't say no, so I took a deep breath and then went along with them and tried my best to learn the words of the song, and the dance movements too. This was a song about a young man taking food to his elderly grandparents, who lived on an island somewhere else. As the song was being performed, I had to dance while making movements as if I was paddling a kayak. Well, to my great delight, I didn't faint on stage, nor did I stumble and fall over my 2 left feet. But I sure thought I might. I looked out at the many hundreds of faces in the audience and thought, what the heck have I gotten myself into? Funny thing, though, all these years later, I consider that dance to be one of the greatest honors ever bestowed upon me, and it's certainly one of the greatest achievements of my life as a public servant, and maybe as a human being, too. But I have to confess, I'm sure glad this was before the age of smartphones. I'd hate to think that someone had a video of me dancing. Interestingly, the following summer, I was at Fort Ross with Professor Goldstein in our archaeological field class. One night in camp, the students enjoyed a campfire program that was put on by 2 Kushaya-Pomo elders from the local Stewart's Point Indian Reservation. Otis Parrish and his brother Warren delighted everyone by telling stories about the Kushaya after dinner, while we were all sitting around the campfire. In one of the stories, Otis sang, and as he did, he made paddling motions. Afterwards, I asked him about that song. Otis wasn't sure about its origins, but he told me that it had something to do with a boy taking food to his relatives on an island. I told Otis about my experience in Kodiak the winter before. Because the Alaskan Natives from Kodiak Island lived and worked among the Kashaya while they were at Fort Ross, I assumed that the story told by Otis was a case of some earlier cultural exchange. This made my dance performance in Kodiak even more precious to me. I could see a bridge, and I had danced across it.